All right, welcome back to The Hill on NewsNation. There was a pretty big political news story today. It was broken by TMZ. They were the first to report that Senator Dianne Feinstein was briefly hospitalized after a fall in San Francisco. Not the senator's staff, TMZ. Feinstein's team is saying it was precautionary and that she returned home after all of her scans were clear. But this comes on the heels of her rocky return to the U.S. Senate following a bout with shingles and encephalitis. A brief reminder of her health saga this year goes as follows. She began her extended absence in February after being diagnosed. Then on April 12th, she faced the first of multiple calls from within her own party asking for her to resign. But on May 10th, she finally returned to the Senate, ending a 3-month absence. Feinstein, who is now 90 years old, recently handed over power of her attorney to her daughter. That happened just 5 days ago, prompting even more questions. Johanna, you have been saying for a while that she needs to go.
You know, the one thing I agreed with Donald Trump from the beginning on was term limits. And I think we've seen a lot of people have been there for a very long time. California is not being adequately represented, and we've got 1 out of every 8 Americans are living in the state of California. We only have 2 senators. That said, I also have to bring up that John McCain died in office. He obviously went to the hospital a lot, being treated for cancer. Ted Kennedy died in office. I think that Democrats are reluctant. McConnell is clearly in office. Strom Thurmond was 100. And the other reason why Democrats are reluctant, other than the politics in California, which is messy, is because they're not sure that the replacement would get her seats. And that's a big question of whether they could actually keep those seats or have those seats.
You mean the committee positions?
Yeah, the committee positions. Could they get those seats if they appoint a replacement? And so they may be inclined, like the others, to keep her in office.
There's obviously the story about Dianne Feinstein, and then there's the story about age of political leadership in Washington. If we have the numbers, and we can put it up, if you look at basically the leaders in Washington, President Biden, the de facto head of the Republican Party, Donald Trump, the top Democrat in the Senate, the top Republican in the Senate, the top Republican in the House, and the top Democrat in the House. The youngest is Hakeem Jeffries, and he is a spring chicken at 53 years old.
That's the right age.
No one in their 30s, no one in their 40s at 53, and then you got several in their 80s. I think that's where people say, you know what, when you see what happened with Mitch McConnell, when you see what's going on with Dianne Feinstein, you know.
No, this is a real problem, and I think people are getting tired of it. And he is a spring chicken. Actually, Jeffries and I were born on the exact same day. When you say that, I really enjoy it.
You sound good.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
But you get the point. It's not about his age. It's when you know, the average member of Congress is 58. Right,
well, also,
so they're well above.
And some are very with it. Bernie Sanders is older than Joe Biden, but he's very much in the game.
Yep. But he's been in the same game for a very long time.
Well, that's true. But Mitch McConnell, I mean, all these guys. But what's going to happen with Feinstein? I mean, they're not going to push her out if she can show up. And the other thing that also is a big factor is their small majority. They need her in the Senate. They need everyone to show up. And some days she can't.
Well, look, you know, age you generally associate with wisdom. So I don't necessarily have a problem with these 60s, 70s, 80s. Richard Shelby just retired. He was 80-plus years old and still doing great with all of his great faculties and physically doing good. But he still knew enough to retire before he started to decline. I think, though, the problem is, though, we're missing the elder statesmen. We just have older and then declining in health and mental faculties, and that's where we have a problem.
Here was Mitch McConnell in his home state of Kentucky just a couple days ago. Watch.
We're up against folks who'd rather let repeat offenders walk free than get tough on crime. I'm glad Governor Beshear finally decided to come to Fancy Farm. It's been the first Saturday in August for 143 years.
Chris, you heard the chance of retire.
Well, we should note here the Fancy Farm gathering is, as the Senate Minority Leader said, venerable old 150-year tradition on the first Saturday in August, that it is this cavalcade where people come together, and it's like the Iowa straw poll or something else. The people who were there came there to boo him. But let's say this: the reason Dianne Feinstein is not retiring is because she doesn't want to get pushed out.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.